From his start at the IBM data center to becoming the CIO of Rubrik, Avon Puri has had quite the journey in the tech world. Prior to joining the young team at Rubrik, Avon cut his teeth at VMware for more than 8 years, rising to the role of Vice President of IT and Business IT. He moved to Rubrik in 2018 and has been diving headfirst into creating and using the technology that makes it possible to work across multiple clouds. In this episode, he and Ian discuss the many roles Avon has had in the past, how data delivery and software has transformed over the years, the future of the cloud, and the excitement surrounding AI. This podcast is sponsored by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Salesforce just introduced the Lightning Platform Mobile, the low-code mobile app development platform that empowers anyone to easily build, publish, and manage AI-powered mobile apps for employees and for customers. Find out more at salesforce.com/buildmobileapps.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. I'm Ian Faison, Chief Content Officer here at Mission.org. And across from me in studio in sunny Palo Alto, Avon, what's going on?
Finally sunny here today.
I know, right? It's been crazy. I mean, everyone else is probably like that. It's like 5 degrees where we live. But yeah, it's great day and a great day to talk about all things IT. So you have a really interesting background and you're the CIO of Rubrik. We're going to get into all that. But first, how'd you get into IT?
So it's actually really interesting. I came here to US in 1995, and it just so happened that my first job was IBM when they were moving to client server actually from mainframe. And I ended up in their data center running, Lotus Note servers and things like that. And then I did my master's in computer science, and I moved over from operations into IT development, and ended up in a company that was basically converting over in those days, going through a true digital transformation of taking documents and converting them as online delivery.
The original that's the real digital transformation. You want to talk about from analog to digital, right?
For 1996, right? And it was really interesting concept at that time. So this insurance company was basically funded by multiple insurance companies, and they provided the data based on which policy prices were created. And they in 1990s figured out that the best way to deliver the information they were collecting was through online. And I was kind of part of the team that was building that system that was delivering all this data that was sitting in hard documents and delivering through online content. And that was kind of my foray into IT development. I grew up from there, ended up working for HP, then landed in Deloitte. I did consulting for about 5 years or so. And then I ran sales and marketing IT for an asset management firm, went to a company called VMware. Pretty sure people know about that. I left VMware about 8 months ago, and I came in as CIO of Rubrik. So that's kind of, in a summary, my journey. So I've been pretty blessed to go through this route, and I've had some amazing experiences, which I'm sure we'll talk about as we go forward.
Yeah, and you ran like a pretty big team at VMware, right?
I did run a very big team, and I was responsible for all the business technology. So essentially delivering capabilities for all the functional areas, sales, marketing, finance, and delivering all the applications and the capabilities they needed to run their business. So we had a pretty sizable team, which was globally distributed across here, India, Europe, Asia Pac, and, basically 24/7 job.
So as you switched to CIO Rubrik, what was that kind of like, and what was the exciting thing about taking on this role?
So I was at VMware for about 8 years, actually more than 8 years. And what I got an opportunity to do at VMware was actually quite amazing, right? So I worked on some really good business critical initiatives and business transformation initiatives. So as a company, we were basically transforming on the way we deliver software, the way we sell software. So I had an opportunity to work very closely with the executives and, do some amazing things there. And when the opportunity from Rubrik came about, my initial kind of, response was not to go from such a, important and really interesting role to a much smaller company who's in the forming years. But as I went through the interview process and I met the leadership team at Rubrik, the CEO and the founders and CFO and others, it became really clear to me that what I've been doing for a number of years would be very, very relevant to what I could do at Rubrik. And so then I decided to switch over and come to Rubrik. And it's been one heck of a journey for the last 8 months.
Yeah. Do you think that jump to startup world is something that, other like IT leaders should be kind of scared of, or is it kind of, a little justified in that, in the hesitancy? Because it seems like you found a really good fit.
Yeah. So two things, right? So let's talk about what was the relevance. So what I was doing at VMware and the business model of VMware is very relevant to what we do at Rubrik. So kind of conversations, kind of hard problems which I was solving at VMware were exactly the same what we're trying to do at Rubrik in just slightly different scale, right? And also one of the big advantage I have is operating in a company like VMware, which has 20,000 plus employees and almost $9 billion in revenue. And when I joined VMware, the revenue was $2.9 billion, right? So I had an opportunity to go from $2.9 billion to $8.5 billion, right? So I saw things when you operate at scale, the issues you run into. So the opportunity I have at Rubrik is to do things right. And when we are much smaller, and I'm actually seeing that already that we're starting to see some of the results out of my lessons learned from work I did at VMware.
Yeah, I think it was episode 2 of IT Visionaries when we interviewed Alvina Antar, the CIO of Zora, where she was saying that was one of the biggest things the thing that she saw was that startups need to hire a CIO earlier, because a lot of people were waiting until IPO or like much later stages, like prep for IPO. And folks were just not, there was so much infrastructure, so much technical debt on the infrastructure side that they're like, you're just walking into an absolute hornet's nest.
Oh, I completely agree. And this is one of the things I would definitely credit Rubrik executive team to recognize early on, was to make sure that we set the foundation right. And I've seen that firsthand in many of the companies, and I've been getting calls for interviews, and companies have already gone public, and they've got infrastructure which is completely mess and a half at this point, and they need someone who can come in and clean this up. And and they don't want to put any money in, but want to make sure that somehow the company can continue to grow and we can go clean the infrastructure. But I think at Rubrik, I was fortunate enough that I got involved at an early stage, and we are doing some really great things on how we are setting the infrastructure and architecture across the board so that we can scale the company to $1 billion plus.
And so, one of your jobs is to build an infrastructure that can support a company with $1 billion in revenue. Like, how do you go about doing that? Like, what's the thought process that you go through?
So what happened here when I was hired in, so one of the advantages I've had is that I've had an opportunity to set some of the basics from scratch here. So first initiative is to set the business architecture basically out of the box without any customizations, how your quote to cash and your procure to pay and all these basic processes, they're being set up are in a way that we can scale, right?
Yeah.
So we just went live with our CPQ process, enabled all our sales folks to be able to take new orders in a different way and enable a different business model. We were able to accomplish that in 3.5 months, and we rolled out the whole program. It has been a great success in the field, right? So basically, how do we really make sure that we keep the systems simple? How do we really set the business process right? How do we get enablement done properly? And how do we make sure that what we're doing is going to scale for $1 billion plus? That's kind of one of the big areas, right?
Yeah.
The second kind of big thing we've been able to do is that we've set the data strategy for the company right. And I've seen this happening in many places where you would end up with multiple data stores and total proliferations. You don't have one view of the data across company. And then you have multiple groups reporting on numbers which are completely different from each other. And then you try to scramble these multi-million-dollar programs implementing data warehouses which never go anywhere. So one of the things we've been able to do at Rubrik, coming right off the bat, is set up this whole data strategy where we are bringing all the product, customer, and business intelligence data in one place and making sure that we're giving 360-degree view of business intelligence and product and customer intelligence to our executives from one place. So I have this whole data and analytics organization that's basically already starting to produce some really useful business comparative information for our execs. The third area is infrastructure. So part of my job, not only I run all the corp infrastructure, but I also have all the engineering and sales labs infrastructure as part of my organization. So we've been looking across the board on how do we really bring all the infrastructure in. Before us coming in, there was a little bit of a sprawl and everybody buying whatever they wanted to buy. Long story short, one of the big things which we've been trying to do, and we're getting fairly successful in there, is how do we bring standardization of infrastructure across the company, start to really have a good accounting of what we're buying and what's a good reason for buying more gear. We also are starting to look at automation. So how do we really start to get better leverage of infrastructure we already got, rather than buying every time we have a need, buy a new piece of hardware. Can you get more utilization of what you've got? And for that, you need to produce all the reporting and all the monitoring, etc. So that's all good. How do you really take your compute, network storage, all the resources, and start to automate? How do you generate a VM so that you can basically run your workload on it? So interesting concepts, and there's been a lot of value we've seen in bringing all this infrastructure together in one place. And then fourth big area is, of course, the security for the company.
Of course,
and
yeah.
We've got a lot of effort going on across product security, across information security, bringing everything together. We have a CISO organization that's part of my team. We are aggressively building that. We're going through certifications and, making sure that not only we are supporting what we need to do internally, but also our customers are asking for a lot of what we're doing with security. So there's tons of stuff going on. So, kind of these four big areas, across the board, aligning that for the company and making sure that we're running as part of IT organization. That's the way we are making sure that we are making company successful and it can scale to $1 billion plus as we go.
How much time did it take you when you first came in to just go and listen and look and talk to employees? Who did you talk to? Were you talking to all the different business leaders, and just how long did that process take to just start unraveling all of the different loose threads?
It's actually a good question. So my original intention was that I wanted to come in and just listen to what's going on for a couple of quarters, at least a quarter. I did not make any big moves for, I would say, about 45 days. And then, we had a big procure to pay project, and we had to take a call on, should we do something tactical and get it out, or should we do something that's a little bit more strategic that's going to take us across $1 billion mark? And I basically had to step in and look at the data and really take a call on what we want to do. And then in the meantime, I was hiring my team. So, I brought some really good people in our organization, and we had first leader on board. So I started in Rubrik, I would say July 9th. I had the first leader by middle of August. The second person started in first week of September, and we're building as we go. So to answer your question, I think that, I would say about 30 days would be good honeymoon period.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and Rubrik's flagship product is its Cloud Data Manager. How much do you work with the product team? How much do you work with customers versus how much you work purely internal in the company?
Yeah, so my team supports all the infrastructure on which product development happens. So yeah. I work very, very closely with engineering. I also work fairly closely with customers, with sales, and also the product teams as well. But, if you look at it, my primary job is to support all those four processes I just talked about earlier. So it's internally focused work. So I would say from percentages wise, it's tough to kind of break out because, I would say 80% or so would be around internal, but I'm sure that as we go forward, there's going to be a lot more demand from, speaking with customers directly. doing some work over there.
Obviously cloud data management is expanding rapidly. What are some of those advancements that like you're really excited about, or how it's going to make working in the cloud easier or more efficient or anything like that?
Yeah, see, I think to look at cloud data management and advancements and why is it very popular, why are companies getting a lot of traction in the marketplace, you have to take a step back and look at what's going on outside in the infrastructure world, right? With the whole advent of infrastructure as a service and the multi-cloud architectures, every company I'm aware of has some sort of a hybrid. They're living in a hybrid world, right?
Yeah.
They've got in our world, right? So we've got 4 data centers we manage internally, but we are also customers of every single public cloud that's out there, right? And we do development here. We have products that support multiple, our workloads in different public clouds. So long story short, the world's becoming this multi-cloud, hybrid cloud world. And what CDM, what Rubrik has really offered is a product that truly works across these multiple clouds. It's kind of, really, unique product in a way that lets you manage or protect your data across applications running across multiple clouds. And the way I'm looking at this is, and this is one of the reasons I joined Rubrik, and I feel that this is the way world's going to head, is if you are going to be living in this multi-cloud world, you're going to be building applications that span across multi-cloud world. You are going to need a product that can help you protect and manage across multi-cloud world. So that's where I'm very excited about CDM, and I think where it's heading is going to be where the industry in general and infrastructure and IT space in general is heading.
So what is Rubric on Rubrik? This is something that you've written about, and I think it's pretty interesting. How did you all come up with this kind of idea?
Yeah, so this is not a unique thing, right? So what I've seen is in most of these tech companies, generally IT organizations end up being, the guinea pigs, for lack of better word, or customer zeros for their own products. So what we do internally is that, again, we have, for all our applications development, for all our engineering work, any infrastructure we run internally and on cloud, we use Rubrik to protect all our data.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, our Rubrik on Rubrik. And then what we've been doing with that is getting all the lessons learned and, case studies and, basically all our scars we are getting in running Rubrik in this hyper growth environment and this, this kind of data, we are sharing with the customers. And that's really what Rubrik on Rubrik is all about. Again, it's about best practices, working with sales and making sure that we get our story out there.
How do you think that, taking those kind of lessons learned, what do you think, like taking some of those lessons learned, what are some of the kind of practical insights or things that you've seen recently that would be really relevant insights for IT leaders and CIOs?
Yeah, I think where I was starting to go with right, so what we're starting to see is that, you're going through application transformation, there's a lot of work around enabling the cloud, and a lot of people are trying to figure out how do you really go into, enable the cloud in your environment. And we are finding is that for us, we've had issues where you would run into issues internal to your data center, and we had to make a switch and really get something going on a public cloud so that we can continue to move forward with our development process. And for some of that type of stuff, we've been able to use our own internal product to make that happen. So what that does is it gives us great capabilities to build this multi-cloud enablement across and true kind of cloud hybridity, for lack of better word. And we've been using... Is
that an official term? Cloud hybridity?
Made it up,
I like it. That's pretty good.
Right. But it basically what it does is, we've been leveraging Rubrik for some of this really interesting piece of work that was really difficult to do in past. Other interesting aspect on, Rubrik on Rubrik, and this is a little bit of a unique situation, but I'm sure that a lot of companies who are in this mode of doing rapid development and building features, etc. So we have a way that we support our developers. They have each of them have development environments on which they build. And we use Rubrik to back up all those development environments. What that does is that it allows developers to go really fast and not worry about making mistakes, because if something happens, then we are able to restore it from Rubrik fairly quickly. And actually, we are at a point where we also, enabled the APIs because Rubrik, if you look at it, one of the best thing that the product has, and from the architecture perspective, is that everything is API driven. So we're even at a point where we have given the APIs and enabled developers to do self-service and use your backup and restore, etc., by themselves without really putting an IT ticket. So that's really kind of some of the amazing things we've been able to do, which basically makes developers go really fast and build fast.
So what does innovation look like at Rubrik?
Yeah, so if you look at us, right, we're a Silicon Valley company formed about 5 years ago. 4 founders, really coming from a very strong tech background, and looking at that whole industry of backup and basically coming up with a product which basically revolutionized the way you manage your data and protect your data. Innovation's in our blood, right? So there's a lot of good stuff going on. We are generally, with the product we've got already, what we're doing is we're bringing, every time there's an interesting use case from customer standpoint, we are very quickly able to figure out how to solve that problem, get together behind it. And also, if you see that some of the interesting things we did, one of our products won both VMware Best of Shows for here in Barcelona in 2018.
Oh, wow.
So, there is a lot of good innovation and entrepreneurial spirit going on in Rubrik with all the good things.
Yeah, and for all of our listeners who don't know, I mean, the founding team, came from or had experience at companies like Google, Facebook, Oracle, obviously, also coming from Lightspeed Ventures and backed from companies from venture capitalists like Lightspeed, Greylock, Khosla, and all of that. I mean, I think that it is definitely a Silicon Valley kind of story there. But I think that the other thing that's so interesting is people talk about the transparency, the culture, and as you came in as the first CIO, I'm sure that you came into something that said like, hey, this is, everything, this is how everything is working. And looking around and saying, well, where do these other pockets of innovation come from? Specifically, where can like IT innovation come from? Switching gears to this application development topic. We've talked about application development a bunch on IT Visionaries, and you worked a ton on this in previous roles. What are some of I guess kind of what's your thought on like where application development is right now in the industry and how it's evolving?
Yeah. So again, my background, I grew up as a developer, right? I told you earlier that I was the web developer that basically took documents online 20 years ago, right? Original digital transformation. But if you look at, we've evolved significantly over last few years. I'm going to give some examples, right? So we built an application, a big application in my previous job. And we thought it was actually a really ultra modern application with the best architecture, with model view controller and all that happiness, right? And within 6 years, that architecture became obsolete in the sense, right? And so we were trying to do a few things, especially as, we started to we wanted to leverage this multi-cloud world. And what we came to realize was that if you have this big monolithic application, there is only so much you can do in this context of being cloud native and leveraging multi-cloud. So we had to go down and start to look at breaking down into microservices and, start to make application a little bit more lightweight so that you can deal with that at microservice layer rather than, the whole application at the same time, and start to containerize it and things like that, which is a very different paradigm from what we were doing, 5-6 years ago. And one of the things I've been using, and it's kind of a funny conversation. So when you talk to customers or even think in our own context, you can't call these applications legacy applications because they're not really legacy, right? These monolithic applications. So I've got this interesting term, right? So legacy applications are what you had 20 years ago, those client server applications. And then, cloud native application is the word of today, right? The applications we have today. You've got this middle set. And I think that this is the best way to describe them is the classic applications. So how do you really take these classic applications and start to really evolve into cloud native? I think that's probably going to be that's going on in the industry today. And there's a lot of action around it. And how do you really support that journey? And how do you go from monolith to microservices? I think is a trend I would say is in right now.
What type are you building apps internally? Like what types of stuff is your team building internally for, business processes and stuff like that?
Yeah. So this is where I took a very different approach from what we did in my previous roles. And one of the things, my lesson learned in life is that keep everything simple, right? You don't want to overcomplicate stuff, and, we can customize. And this is not a new thing, right? Every other IT practitioner would know that, you don't want to customize a lot of things because it comes back and hits you back pretty badly. So one of the things we've used, and we've been very successful around it so far in Rubrik, is that we are keeping everything out of the box and we are keeping everything in cloud. So we are company born in clouds. So for all our IT applications, we have a simple concept that we are not going to put a single box in our data center that's going to run anything related to IT. Okay, so and it's so far, and we're now almost 1,500 employees company, right? And so far it's working. So that's kind of generally our thinking there on internal applications. But having said that, we are doing some interesting stuff with applications, especially from the product side. And if you look at the concept of a product, Rubrik is kind of formed on taking this backup of the data from the application, and then as you really start to look at this data, there's an opportunity to build multiple applications on top, right? So we've got let's say recovery application, and we've got this concept of Polaris, which is our SaaS platform, that lets you perform some actions. And one of the interesting use case we've been using is to basically detect ransomware, right? So you could basically run some sort of a ML between the data you've got in your data center, and then you can run some interesting ML and detect whether there's a ransomware attack in your environment, in your data. So I think that's kind of the way we are looking at it. So a lot of focus on building applications on the product side, which really solve customer problems and keep IT really lightweight, make sure that we leverage what we have on SaaS and things like that.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating thing because I think, the company is so new. It was founded in 2014, right?
That is correct, yeah.
You're looking at a huge advantage. I mean, there's a lot of times where, incumbent companies or bigger companies have a lot of advantage because for a bunch of different reasons. But this is one of those great use cases where it's like, it's great to be this new because you can make those type of IT decisions. I'm sure there's a lot of CIOs and IT leaders that are listening are like, man, I wish I could have done that. Does that feel like you have a real advantage there?
Oh, I totally think so. And again, this is not my first rodeo, right? I've been doing this for a while. And amount of time we are spending on real business conversations than figuring out why a particular stat didn't run and my performance on the database is not right and this query is slow. It's amazing, right? I would say that by making sure that we don't customize, by keeping processes out of the box, by leveraging industry platforms and using SaaS for delivering all the work we want to do, it's freed up a lot of my time to do better things with my time than just focusing on internal applications.
How do you see AI and machine learning playing into what you're working on at Rubrik?
Yeah, so of course, we are a data protection company, and if we don't have a play on AI ML, then that's not a software for tomorrow. So there are a bunch of interesting things going on the product side. And I mentioned to you about ransomware. That's definitely there's a machine learning component to that, and there are a few other things which are in the hopper, which I'll probably not talk about right now. But we are also looking more from IT side and working very closely with our support organization on how do we really start to get better on supporting the installs we already got, right? Things like, can we be proactive in providing the support? Can we really start to analyze machine logs and get some intelligence out of it? And so that's really definitely we're working on as we speak. Then you have also on the sales side, can we start to look at, we've got interesting, again, we are a growing company and we want to be very careful on how we deploy our headcount. So start to think about, let's say if you want to help sales guys figure out what's the best way to deploy 50 new headcounts you're going to get. So we have some interesting models where we could look at and give that suggestion to our head of sales. And so we've got some use cases like that we've been working on. It's been very well received within the company. But again, we are growing, we are small, we are still setting up our infrastructure. We are starting to collect the data. I spoke earlier about how we are setting up a single data lake and data warehouse for all our product, customer, and business intelligence data. I think that it's going to set us up really well to be really mature AI ML shop as we go forward.
Final question before we get into the lightning round. What are you most excited about in terms of technology, data, or IT that is coming like right around the corner?
Again, I have to go back. I would say that there are two or three things which have defined our generation, right? Internet, mobile, right? I would say that AI is going to be the next big thing. It's going to define a generation. I think we're just testing what it's going to do right now, but there is a lot more to come and there's a lot more potential. And, there are things like where people talk about, we should be worried about AI. AI is going to replace our jobs. And I'm not so sure about that. I think that, what I'm starting to see is that even within our context of business, there are so many advantages of just doing some basic intelligence stuff out of data you're gathering and start to make some intelligent guesses out of it, that there is a lot more to come. So to answer your question, I would say that I'm very excited about AI. I think we can do a lot with that. I also feel that this is going to change a generation. Like my 9-year-old kid, when he was born, he already had iPhone in his hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So every time he sees the TV, he tries to swap the screen to make it work. So I think
swiping magazines and
exactly right. So my sense is that the next generation is going to have something like that's dependent on AI, and they're going to want to do similar to what today's kids are trying to do with swiping the screens.
Let's get into lightning round. These questions are fast and easy, just like the lighting platform from Salesforce. Fast and easy questions coming at you. Thanks to our friends at the lighting platform by Salesforce. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Number 1, what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Angry Birds.
Oh, yeah. Great. Man, I remember when that first came out and I was in the Army, and every single person when we'd get back after training or whatever would be sitting on playing Angry Birds.
That tells you how old I am. So
favorite time-saving tool?
I would say Auto Predictor on Google.
I love it. Gmail, that's so great. When it says, I've said this before on the show, but when it predicts like a whole paragraph for you and you're like, man, do I say that much? What's your favorite one-day getaway in the Bay Area?
One-day getaway in Bay Area, Carmel Beach.
Carmel's great. We did a story on Clint Eastwood, and I didn't realize that he used to be the mayor of Carmel. Yeah, totally random. Favorite use of AI or chatbots you've seen?
I love those bots on Slack. I think that they're super cool and help significantly.
So we have our head of growth does these a bunch, who's basically our head of IT as well. Hybrid marketing and IT. That should be its own podcast. But yeah, he makes all these great bots, and one of them is Toasty, who's a golden doodle you might have seen running around here. But he's at the studio. He's our mascot, and so Toasty bot like messages me all the time. It's pretty good. Favorite team, sports or otherwise?
Favorite team, sports. I still love cricket. I grew up in India, so I haven't gotten out of that yet.
Love it. What do you do for fun here?
I have 2 kids, 15 and 9. And between working with them on homeworks and, especially for a high schooler, and then between their sports, and both my kids actually play field hockey.
Oh, that's fun.
And, so the amount of tournaments and practice and all that, but that's quite a bit of fun, and I don't get time to do anything else.
Right. Best advice for a first-time CIO?
Best advice for CIO, first-time CIO, again, I would say that keep your environment simple. If you have a lot of legacy, then there's a way to get out and start to really look at cloud-only applications going forward and clean up your legacy as you go would be the best advice I can give. And I know it's sometimes difficult to fight against the pressure from businesses to customize the applications, but my experience is that fight's very well worth it.
That's it. That's it for Lightning Round. Thanks to our friends again at the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Fast and easy, just like those questions. That's it. That's all we got. Anything else for us? Anything to plug? Oh, you're on Twitter, right?
I am on Twitter, yeah.
What's your Twitter handle for our audience?
Puri, Aspuri.
Yeah, we'll link that up in the show notes. And yeah, it was just great having you here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you again to our friends at Salesforce. IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Salesforce just introduced the Lightning Platform Mobile, the low-code mobile app development platform that empowers anyone to easily build, publish, and manage AI-powered mobile apps for employees and for customers. Find out more at salesforce.com/buildmobileapps.